All right, today we are going to be talking about section 9.1, which is called the ellipse. All right, so we're going to talk about ellipses, hyperbolas, and parabolas that face not only up and down, but left or right in chapter 9. So an ellipse has very unique characteristics. Okay, so let's look at a couple of them first. When we get to hyperbolas, you'll see that ellipses and hyperbolas are similar, but they have very different characteristics to them. So in an ellipse, you have addition signs. Okay, you got addition signs, whether it is facing a horizontal ellipse or a vertical ellipse. They are going to be addition signs between the two fractions. You also have an x squared on top, and you have a y squared second. So x squared in the numerator and then y squared in the numerator also. So you have your addition signs keeping the two fractions together. You have x squared, y squared in the numerators. Now, those numerators may have parentheses added to them, but the x will always be first, the y is always going to be second. Now, what's different than a hyperbola is that an ellipse, the denominator is going to change, okay? The denominator is going to be wherever a is, that is going to be your major axis. So in this first problem here, where it says x squared over a squared plus y squared over b squared equals 1, the a squared is right here and it's underneath the x, okay? Since the a squared is underneath the x, that means that x is going to be your major axis. So x is going to have the longer side than the y, okay? Now over here on the right-hand side where it says the vertical major axis, the a squared is underneath your y. Since it is underneath your y, that means that y is going to be your major axis. So that means that y is going to have the longer side than the x. So what you need to remember is that a squared is always going to equal the larger number, and it's going to tell you what your major axis is. Major axis is. Okay, so if a squared is underneath the x, then the x is going to be your major axis. If a squared is underneath your y, then y squared is going to be your major axis, making it vertical. X squared is always first, y squared is always second in the numerator. That does not change. So looking at the left-hand side here, all right, the left-hand one right here, I just put a red star by it. You have on your x-axis, you have points at -2 and 0 and +2 and 0. Okay. Then you have on the y-axis 0 and 1 and 0 and -1. Each of your equations when you're doing the ellipse is going to start out as x squared and then y squared, and then you've got your plus sign equal to 1. And then the denominator you're going to have to figure out. Now, if you go to the x-axis and you find your point, which would be 2, this is going to be 2 squared, which is going to give you x squared over 4 plus y squared, and then it's up to 1 on the y-axis, so it's going to be y squared over 1 squared, which is 1, is equal to 1. The 1 is understood to be in the denominator. You don't have to put it, but just for right now, it's what we're doing. Now, on the right-hand side here, you can see that on the y-axis, we have gone up 2, and on the x-axis, we've gone left 1 and right 1. Y is going to be your major axis because the longer length is on the y, okay? So you're going to write your equation, and when you write your equation, you've got x squared plus sign y squared equal to 1. And then the denominators, you go to your x-axis, you look at your x-axis here, and on the x-axis I have 1s, so underneath the x I have 1 squared. And then on the y-axis I have 0, 2, so I have 2 squared. Okay, so this one would be x squared over 1 plus y squared over 4 is going to be equal to 1. Okay, so you've got your vertical and you've got your horizontal. Okay, let's move on to number 1. It says graphing an ellipse centered at the origin. The reason why I know this ellipse is centered at the origin is because there are no parentheses. Again, we've talked about parentheses before, and parentheses shift you, okay? So there's not going to be any shifting. So your first point is going, or your middle, your origin is going to be at 0. So we're going to be moving from that point there, okay? So from here, we're going to go and look at our equation. X squared over 9 plus y squared over 4 is equal to 1. Wherever the larger number for the denominator is, that's going to be your a squared. So a squared is going to be 9, b squared is going to be 4. So what that means is that a is going to be 3 and b is going to be 2. Underneath the x is where I got the 9 from, and 9 is going to give me 3. So on the x-axis, I'm going to go right 3, and I'm going to go left 3. Those are my vertices. Okay, because that is the major axis. Every time you have a major axis, the vertices are going to be on the major axis. Now, underneath the y is 4, so it's going to be 2. So you're going to go and find the y-axis, which is right here, and I'm going to go up 2, and I'm going to go down 2. Okay, these are going to attach to the vertices, which are on the major axis of x. Okay, well that is a very good ellipse for me. All right, now the last thing we're going to do is the foci. The foci is something that's going to be more prevalent in the hyperbolas, but for right now we're going to do it also. The formula for finding the hyperbola is c squared is equal to a squared minus b squared. The way you can remember that is in an ellipse formula you have an addition sign, so for the foci it's going to be opposite, minus sign. C squared we do not know. A squared is going to be 9 minus your b squared, which is 4. So I'm going to get c squared is equal to 5. And then I'm going to square root both sides because I want to graph the c. So c is going to be approximately 2.2. So from the center, the origin, I'm going to go 2.2. So I'm going to go right about here and right about here. And I'm going to label them with an F because those are the foci. The foci on an ellipse are always inside the vertices. Okay, vertices are on the major axis, which is your A, okay, your major axis, and the foci are always inside. So if you were getting something where the foci was on the outside of the vertices and at the outside of the ellipse also, you are doing it incorrectly. Okay, so why don't you go try number 2 right now and see how you do on that. Okay, so here's number 2. Check that out. Okay, let's look at number 3 here. The issue with number 3 is that it doesn't have fractions, first off, and second of all, it's not equal to 1. So what you need to do is you need to divide by 400, so divide everything by 400 in order to get this equal to 1. To start for an ellipse to graph it, it has to be equal to 1. So you're going to have 25 divided by 400, so it's going to be x squared over 25 goes into 400 16 times, plus 16 divided by 400, that's going to go in 25 times, and then that's going to be equal to 1. So my a squared is always going to be my larger number, so that's going to be 25. My b squared is going to be the smaller one, so that's going to be 16. And then I need to find my c. So I've got c squared is equal to 25 minus, because if this is an addition sign, then this is going to be minus my b, which is 16. So I'm going to get c squared is equal to 25 minus 16, which is going to give me 9, and then I'm going to square root both sides. So c is going to give me 3. So now I'm going to put everything on the graph. Underneath my x, I have a 16, so that's 4 for my b. So I'm going to go 4 to the left, and then I'm going to go 4 to the right. And then for my a, which is underneath my y, I'm going to go on my y-axis up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay? All right, then I'm going to create my ellipse. This time I'm looking at a vertical ellipse because the longer side is on the y-axis. So these are going to be my vertices, and then my foci are going to be with my vertices. So my foci is going to be right here on the inside on the major axis. Your foci are always on your major axis, which also has your vertices on it. Okay? All right, everybody go try number 4, please. All right, let's look at number 5. It says find the standard form of the equation of an ellipse with foci at -1, 0, and 1, 0, and the vertices at -2, 0, and 2, 0. Vertices are going to be representing your A's. Okay, these are going to represent your A's, and the foci is going to represent your C. So we don't actually know what our B is right now. Okay, I like to graph it just so I can see what's going on. So if I was taking just a small little graph here, and I got to graph the foci, it'd be -1 and 1, so -1 and 1. So there's our foci right there. And then our vertices would be -2 and 2, so -2 and 2. Now, if you look, you'll notice that the vertices and the foci are both on the x-axis. So because they're on the x-axis, that means that they are going to be your major axis. Now, when you're writing an ellipse, you're going to have x squared first, and then an addition sign, and then y squared. And then you're going to have that equal to 1, okay? So then from there, because your vertices and your foci are on the x-axis, that means that your vertices are going to be your a, it's going to be your a squared. That's going to go underneath your x because those are both on the x-axis. So this would be a, this would be a, so a squared is going to give me 4, okay? So a squared is going to give me 4. Now, I don't know what b is. So I have to find b squared, actually, not just b, but b squared in order to finish this standard form. So I'm going to know right now that my vertices are my a squared, which is 4. My foci is at -1 and 0, so these are c's. So that's just going to be 1 because 1 squared is just 1. So now we have c squared is equal to a squared minus b squared. C I know is 1, A I know is 4, and B squared I don't know. So then I'm going to subtract the 4 here. So I have -3 is equal to -b squared, divide by a negative, so I get b squared is equal to 3. I am not trying to find b, I'm trying to find b squared. So I just take this b squared out, I don't radical it, and this just becomes 3. So my answer is going to be x squared over 4 plus y squared over 3 is equal to 1. Now you don't have to draw the little side thing there. I just like to visually see where my major axis is. I think it helps me a lot more. All right, everybody go do number 6, please. All right, for number 7, it's going to be very different here. You've got your parentheses in here. You've got a couple different things happening here. So first I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this, I want black. I'm going to draw the lines on the graph. They didn't come off of my other stuff. All right, so I'm going to draw my lines in black here, making my graph so I can see it better. There we go. Okay. All right, so we have the same issue that we did before where the 64 is equal to 64. So we need to get rid of the 64, making everything equal to 1. So we're going to divide everything by 64. So then I'm going to have x minus 2 on top squared plus y minus 1 on top squared equal to 1. And then I'm going to do the bottom. I should have done that first. So 16 going into 64 is going to be 4. 4 going into 64 is going to be 16. Now the same rule applies even when there's parentheses. The larger number is going to be your a squared. So my a squared is going to be 16. My b squared is going to be 4. I'm going to find my c squared for my foci. So I've got c squared is equal to 16 minus 4. So c squared is going to be equal to 12, and then I'm going to square root both sides. So c is going to be approximately, all right, so then c is going to be approximately 3.5. Now, here is what happened with this question for number 7. Because you have parentheses, you have a shift. So you're going to have a new vertex. Your vertex is going to be h and k. So here's h and here's k. H is always going to be with your x, and K is always going to be with your Y, okay? So those are always going to be together. So anytime you see H, it's going to be with your X, or your X is going to have H. Anytime you see Y, it's going to have the X with it, okay? And if you forget that, X comes before Y in the alphabet, H comes before K in the alphabet. So we're going to have a new vertex, and when you take your vertex out, your H and your K are always going to come out opposite signs, okay? So because the H was -2, it's going to come out as a +2. And because the K was a -1, it comes out as a +1. All right, so you pull those out opposite, because in the original formula, if you go back into the ellipse formula, there are originally addition signs in there, okay? So it's just easier to remember that they come out opposite sign in there. So we're going to go to the vertex of 2, 1. So I'm going to go right 2 and up 1, and I'm going to make that my vertex. And this is going to be, I'm going to put it as a VX, so for vertex instead of your vertices. Now, everything is going to move from the vertex. So my A was 16, so this is my A squared is 16. It's underneath my Y. My Y runs vertically. My Y runs up and down. So from the vertex, I'm going to go up 4 and down 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, up 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, these are my vertices because they are the larger number in the denominator. Now, from my vertex, I'm going to go left and right according to the x-axis. So underneath the x is the 4. So x runs horizontally. So from the vertex, I'm going to go left 2, and I'm going to go right 2. Okay, so you're just going along with whether the x is vertical, the x is actually horizontal, sorry, and the y runs vertically. So this is going to be the ellipse that we're looking at. The last thing we need to put on here is the foci. Foci is going to be with the vertices. So from the vertex, you're going to go up 3.5, so 1, 2, 3, so really close to the vertex, or the vertices, and down close to the vertices, okay? So technically, if you were looking here, okay, the foci and the vertices are going to be running pretty much on the same line, and that's a vertical line because 16 is the larger number, and that is representing A squared, and it's underneath your Y. All right, let's try number 8 here. So let's just piece apart this. A squared is going to be the larger denominator, which is going to be 36. B squared is going to be the other one, so it's going to be 16. We need to find our foci, so it's going to be C squared is equal to 36 minus 16. C squared is going to be equal to 20. And then we're going to square root both sides. So I've got C is going to be approximately 4.5. Now remember, you're going to go, foci is going to have a positive and negative. So I've got my A squared and my B squared. They both have their positive and negative also. You're going to have the H is always with your X, the K is always with your Y, and that's going to be your new vertex. So you're shifting off of the origin. Remember, they always come out opposite, okay? So opposite sign, because in the original formula, they're addition signs. So H is going to be a +1, and the K is going to be a -3. So +1 and -3, and there is your new vertex. I label it again as VX for vertex. From there, going to your A squared, which is 36, that is underneath your X. So that means that you're going to run left and right 6 because X runs left and right. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's my vertice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just kind of off of here. That's the vertice. Okay, B is going to run the opposite direction. It's 16, it's underneath Y, so that's going to run vertically. So you're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4 vertically, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Going to attach this. All right, now our major axis here is where our vertices are. Okay, our major axis is where the vertices are, and your vertices are on the x-axis. So we are going to run from the vertex 4.5 left and 4.5 right. Okay, so from the vertex, I'm going to go 4.5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There is my foci. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, 4, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Don't forget to count the y-axis. I just forgot to count it. All right, so there's your graph there. And if you can look and see, you'll notice that the vertices and the foci are on the same line because that's your major axis. Because if you go back, 36 is the larger number in the denominator, and it's underneath x. Okay, so we just finished. All right, section 9.1 homework. It's going to be page 930 through 931, 8, 16, 22, 23, 27, 41, 44, and 45. It'll be up on Canvas in a little bit. All right. I want you to make sure that you're labeling everything. So the a squared, the b squared, the c squared, the vertex, if it's h and k, if you have an h and k, and then I want you labeling everything on a graph. Okay. Have a good day.